What's good, YouTube fam? It's your boy Tony, aka Descendant of Chaos and Controversy. Now, I've been wanting to talk about this particular topic of discussion for some time now. And it wasn't until recent that something was brought to my attention to have me get up off my ass and say, you know what, this is the fire that I needed to be lit up under my butt to have this discussion. Okay? Now, what I noticed, there's been a deterrent that's been frequently brought up whenever those within the black community go to discuss their grievances or bring forth any awareness or trying to make those aware of and acknowledge, some of the injustices that take place and some of the deterrents that we still face that shouldn't even exist within today's era, you would think. However, the reality of it is it still exists. And if you look at certain demographics that's been coming up, like those within the black community use as a go-to cliche to throw out there to make a generalized or a blanket outlook or perception in regards to talking about the negative aspects of the black community, like Brandon Tatum always bringing up Chicago, I noticed there's a pattern when it comes to certain demographics that I always bring up whenever talking about certain situations that I don't think gets through to some people. Like I said, kudos to those who don't have to experience things that others have to. Okay? And you're very fortunate. You're very privileged in that aspect to not have to have the misfortune of running into some of these unwanted encounters, whether it be with law enforcement in certain demographics like Pennsylvania, Boston, New York, Chicago, Mississippi, Missouri, Wisconsin. It's just certain, or Texas. These are the demographics of certain areas that keep coming up that are problematic when it comes to certain engagement with certain entities. Okay? Now, the thing that I can't stand is when you go to speak on these problematic issues, the first thing that someone wants to throw out there as a deterrent to throw you off guard or to make you, I guess their main goal or intention is for us to self-reflect on ourselves as a collective is you need to stop with that victimhood mentality. So okay, if that's the logic that we're running with, so okay. So what you're saying is, it'll be okay for me to go out there, I don't know, and wreak havoc, cause harm, or anything that is detrimental to the existence of someone else. And then when they go to state their grievances about what I did, I could turn around and say, stop playing the role, stop having that victimhood mentality. And I have other people co-sign what I've done to those people to tell them the same thing. Stop with that victimhood mentality. You don't see nobody else bitching about what was done to them. And then, like, when I talk about, like, from my standpoint, because yes, there's a lot of things in my life that I've experienced, whether it was through my own willingness or unwillingness to even had to, either way you look at it, it humbled me a great deal to where I don't sit on a high horse with this self-entitled, I don't know, position of judgment, looking down on others with a lack of empathy. No. I mean, don't get me wrong. I used to walk around with my fucking nose stuck up in the air thinking I was better than this, that, and everybody else because of my upbringing. And speaking of which, I'm going to go there. Now, what I don't get about some of these people within the black community that just have a total disregard about the struggles of people within different demographics of this country and the blatant disregard of what they go through. And they're very unsympathetic towards, you know, the shit that is thrown in their direction. I don't get it. Because let me tell you something. My father, and I've shared this many times over. I'm biracial. I'm half black. I'm half white. You know, but I was adopted into an all-black family. I've said this. My father worked hard. We were never on any government assistance. My mother, she was worked for the IRS, had a realtor's license, was into real estate. My dad worked for Pratt & Whitney as a tool and die maker, working on engine parts. And he was a landlord of 4 rooming houses. I know because as a kid, I had to go with him on the weekend to go collect rent. And for whatever tenant that either moved out or got evicted and stuff, we had to go and redo the whole room and stuff and tear up the carpet, put new carpet down, paint the walls, put up new wallpaper, put new beds in, this, that, and everything else. Amongst, you know, keeping the upkeep of the grounds of the properties, like raking the leaves and cutting the grass and repairing the sidewalks, this, that, and everything else. So yes, a work ethic was instilled into me as a child growing up. I didn't have the luxury to go play every damn weekend. No, I was with my father at his side working. Okay. So, with that being said, some of the things that my father was teaching me came with certain lessons. And he gave me some of a rundown on what it was like for him growing up as a child in North Carolina. My grandfather, his father, was a sharecropper. We all know the history behind sharecropping within the black community. Okay. But when it got to a point where my dad had busted his ass, this, that, and everything else, and my grandfather left the farm and stuff that the family, you know, growing up had attended, because my dad had, I believe, what was it, 2 brothers and 3 sisters? Yeah, 3 sisters. They all worked on that farm. Okay. But when they grew up, you know, many turned out successful. They worked hard. They worked hard, got an education, this, that, and everything else. The one thing they didn't do, even though their hard work had paid off, they did not forget what it took, the struggles that and the sacrifices made that it took for them to get to where they are or where they were in life at the point that they were in. They acknowledged what it was like, what life was like for my grandfather, my grandmother growing up at those times. And yes, everything they did was to have a better life for us as kids growing up. Yes, I went to a Catholic school. Yes, we went on vacations. But even with all those luxuries that you know, had us enjoy the positive aspects of life, the realities that go along with the positivity is also met and balanced with the negative. Okay? The neighborhoods that my dad decided to move into, cops were called on us because it was that, who are these Negroes? They don't belong in this neighborhood. But being that my dad had money, money talks, bullshit walks. So with that being said, but it didn't take away from that factor. The outlook of, hey, what are you doing here? And that happened twice. That happened when we moved on Chester Street in Hartford, Connecticut. And again, when my dad moved to Colchester, Connecticut. And again, we were, as we try to put our make a foothold in any establishment to call our home, it was mostly in a predominant white setting. So, you know, and it's not to say that it deterred my family to say, oh, well, we're not going to stay in this neighborhood or we're going to move out. No, they're like, no, we worked hard. Fuck that. We're going to stay here. Our money is just as good as yours. You know? But the reality of it is still the embarrassment of having the cops come to your house to question whether or not you are of a legitimate resident on your own property, when other people don't have to go through that shit. But then some people will be so insensitive to say, well, I know that was poor. I mean, I know that was unfortunate, but you're still breathing, right? You're still alive. You didn't get shot. Your family didn't get taken to jail, right? An experience is an experience regardless of the magnitude of the outcome. The point of the matter is we shouldn't have to experience that shit, period. But it goes to show you that the perception. So, you know, when speaking on the director, the Black Panther director, who had to go through what he had to go through in the bank with the banking situation, and no, it wasn't no white bank tellers or no white managers, but yet and still, there was a thing that came out, that thing I just posted about the Wells Fargo's bank, how they deny black people loans or approvals for this or approvals for that. There's discrimination that happens more often than none. But some people just brush it off because it's like, it ain't such a big deal. Until it becomes a big deal. Until your disregard for it not being a big deal affects someone else greater than it did you. And when you decided not to nip that shit in the butt right then and there, you just left the door open for the fuckery to continue. And I don't see how that doesn't come into play when people just like have this passive aggressive attitude towards things because they're not appreciative of how they are able to be where they are now if it wasn't for what their family in the past had done to get them to where they are today. And not everything is about being or playing the role of a victim. Basically, as cut and dry as it is, it's just, hey, here's the problem. This shit needs to be corrected so it doesn't happen to us or anybody else for that matter. We need to come up with a solution. It needs to be solved, and then we can move forward. And the reason why we remain stagnant and keep talking about these same recycled bullshit issues is because there's no solutions that have been put into play. Because either we're content with the bullshit